When the shadows lengthened across the sun-baked sands of ancient Egypt, even the mighty Nile forgot its sacred duty to rise. Imagine the twilight of the pharaoh gods, an era when the river that gave life to an empire refused to flood, leaving fields barren and hearts hollow. This is not a tale of divine retribution, but of human resilience and desperation, of Ankhtifi's grain wars, and whispers of cannibal feasts along the Nile banks. Let us sift through layers of dust and bone to uncover the stark reality of a civilization teetering on the brink, where survival meant cooking with clay and praying for the next flood. As we delve into these ancient echoes, prepare for a journey where the lines between myth and reality blur, a story of endurance and ingenuity in the face of unimaginable hardship. Step back with me to ancient Egypt, a world where pharaohs reigned not only as kings, but as living gods, commanding both man and nature with divine authority. In this era, Egypt thrived under a shared belief in the regular flooding of the Nile, a precious lifeline that dictated the rhythms of life, agriculture, and spirituality. Yet, dark clouds gathered in this land of abundance, casting a long shadow over what we know as the Old Kingdom. This narrative takes us to a time when the Nile, the mighty river of life, hesitated in its sacred duty, plunging Egypt into a spiral of bewildering drought and ensuing chaos. The mighty Nile's refusal to flood became an eerie silence. For centuries, its annual inundation brought fertile soil, ensuring abundant harvests and a flourishing society. The river's ebb and flow were so intertwined with life and belief that its rhythm felt like the heartbeat of the gods themselves. Yet, around 2200 BC, a shift occurred, carving an ominous path through history. Hidebound figures on Elephantine Island's flood stage marks told the unsettling tale of failure, a series of diminished floods that upset the sacred natural balance. Chaos reigned as fields lay barren, economies faltered, and Egypt's once grandeur trembled on the brink of oblivion. Trade vanished and the land became a dusty, monochromatic canvas of despair, its lush green replaced by unyielding aridity. The weakening roar of the Nile shook the social order of the Old Kingdom. The great pharaoh Pepi, the second's reign, once buoyed by unwavering divinity, faltered as centralised governance crumbled. Tax papyri documents ceased, symbolising not only an economic collapse but a deep-rooted crisis in faith and governance. As the grip from the capital loosened, a shift took place. Regional governors, once minor players, stepped into the void, emerging as rulers in their own right. Nomarchs steering their communities through dire straits with little more than grit and necessity. It was an age of both fragmentation and innovation, where power became as decentralised as the sustenance they sought tirelessly each day. Consider the desert transformation, as lush landscapes morphed into barren dustlands. The story is almost tangibly scribbled in stone cores from the Nile Delta, vivid records of year upon silent year, marked by silt indicating long droughts. This unforgiving environment demanded adaptation. Resources dwindled, forging creativity in survival. Here, agriculture found new strategies, appealing to superstitions and age-old customs for guidance. Egyptian resilience, like the steadily eroding city walls, held firm against the seemingly insurmountable. Yet beneath this cloak of endurance lay a simple truth. Nature, once revered and negotiated with, had become an unpredictable adversary. The echoes of this transformation reverberate through the sands, carried by the whispering winds over ancient tombs. These graves, unfinished and silent, spoke volumes without uttering a word. In place of grandeur, half-carved figures tell tales of spiritual rupture, the death not just of bodies but of hoped-for eternities. As the promise of an eternally thriving afterlife slipped from grasp, Egyptians were left to grapple with a palpable void where faith once anchored life itself. This shift was not merely economic. Traditions dissolved as religious adherence wavered, and the spectral uncertainty roamed the land. It wouldn't be a complete tale without hearing from those who documented the shifting sands beneath their feet. Braving calamity, chroniclers of the ages picked up reeds to weave stories of human persistence and despair. Judicial rolls and fragile papyri gleam faintly under history's gaze, providing insight into a society coping with the tectonic shifts of the world around them. These documents breathe the narrative of individuals, our unknown guides through loss, adaptability, courage, and moments of ingenuity that rose amidst adversity. These chronicles built bridges of shared humanity, crossing centuries to ignite spirits long buried but never truly forgotten. In times of distress, superstition took on new colours, splashing wild strokes on this ancient canvas. Egyptians, faced with nature's illogical wrath, turned to creative, sometimes desperate, interpretations to navigate chaos. New rites sprung forth as petitions to both forgotten and familiar gods, invoking their guidance to re-establish order. Not of madness, but of earnest attempts to believe. These practices infused meaning into struggles. Such endeavours, seeking harmony with unseen forces, reflected a solemn dance of humankind striving for understanding in an impenetrable world. Through hardship's crucible, innovation emerged like a stubborn reed. Communities, once defined by isolation, now leaned into the warmth and light of shared fires and collaborative networks. With resourcefulness, they carved new paths to survival, weaving together a tapestry of interdependence. Friendships and communal ties lit the darkest of days, sustained not just physically, but through the oral histories passed over dying embers, the tales and whispers that kept spirits alive during relentless trials. As this chapter of history closes, the stories to be told resonate with humanity's enduring spirit. Rise and fall, loss and recovery. Such is the nature of time's journey. Tales of pharaohs and rivers, carved and scribed through patient millennia, weave themselves into a larger narrative arc that eternal time alone holds in balance. These silent testimonies painted on nature's broad strokes remind us that while empires may crumble, memories endure, etched from the struggles and triumphs of those who lived, laughed, mourned, and persevered alongside the undying Nile. In the turmoil of Egypt's first intermediate period, a time when the once unwavering rule of pharaohs crumbled and chaos reigned, a figure emerged from the dust with ambition as sharp as any blade. His name was Ankhtifi, a nomarch, a local governor, who stood out in a landscape fractured by famine and strife. He harnessed charisma and cunning to claim the nome of Hierakonpolis, navigating the scarcity of food like a tactician on a chessboard of survival. His story is not just of personal ambition, but of sheer resilience against a backdrop that demanded both diplomacy and ruthlessness. In the strained fields and shrinking granaries, Ankhtifi perceived that control over grain was, in itself, control over life. As droughts transformed the Nile from giver to taker, he understood that grain reserves were gold. His name became synonymous with survival tactics, where securing a sack of grain was akin to winning a battle. This pragmatic view turned him into a lifeline for some and a grim reaper for others. His era was not without dark humour. To spare one village was, by grim necessity, to starve another. In his hands, famine was both weapon and shield, a brutal dance between survival and morality. Ankh-Tifi's legacy is carved in stone at Moala, where inscriptions within his tomb echo tales of desperation that seemed almost apocalyptic. All of Upper Egypt was dying of hunger. The inscriptions lament, depicting a tapestry of famine woven into the walls. These words, steeped in both pride and grim resignation, offer a glimpse of an Egypt grappling with despair. The tombs speak with haunting candour, recounting a realm where hunger led society down dark paths, including unimaginable acts of desperation. The grim facts etched into the stone at Moala are accompanied by humble pottery tallies. Simple yet telling, these artifacts chart the rationing system Ankh-Tifi employed. A ledger of life and death. Every mark on the pottery symbolises a handful of barley, crucial for survival. Here, arithmetic wasn't just math, but a lifeline, and every etch was both promise and curse, a crude ledger from which human existence hung by a thread. In the shadow of such statistics, daily life in Ankh-Tifi's territory was a paradox of despair and innovation. People adapted, displaying an incredible resolve that turned scarcity into subsistence. Tradition unravelled as unconventional methods, gathering roots, substituting what little they had, became essential practices. People redefined survival by knitting a fabric of resilience from threads of necessity, changing as their situation demanded. While politics and famine were at play, another narrative wove through the community, a tapestry of fear tinged with superstition. Cannibal tales, haunting in their simplicity and dark in implication, began to circulate. They were a tool, a way to enforce obedience through the power of fear. Such chilling whispers carried not only as law, but as deterrent, keeping the anxious populace in check, ensuring societal norms grudgingly persisted. Yet unquestionably, the toll on humanity was immense. Ankh-Tifi's pragmatism, though effective, left deep scars in the soul of society. The famine wore its mark on human bodies. Malnutrition, death, decisive moments etched in time. What remains are bones, mute witnesses to an era's agonies, a grim reminder of lives spent in the relentless search for the next meal. The stark choices Ankh-Tifi faced provoke modern reflections on the ethics of survival. In times of unimaginable need, how far should one go to tip the scales toward endurance? His actions compel us to consider the weight of morality in crisis, where decision-making veers into ethical grey zones and human dignity is put to the test. Echoes from Moala suggest that such historical lessons reverberate far beyond their epoch. They offer a cautionary tale, a testament to the intricate dance between human ambition and nature's capricious temperament. Today, Ankh-Tifi's actions can serve as a reflective mirror against which modern society grapples much as he did, with nature's will and human frailty locked in a timeless struggle. Ankh-Tifi stands, neither villain nor hero, as a testament to the complex hierarchy of human survival. His story is etched in the ledger of history, not as a paragon of virtue or vice, but rather as a figure who navigated reality's harrowing landscape with all its brutality and nuance. Let his story remind us that human existence, with all its triumphs and tragedies, continually repeats its age-old dance with survival, shaped by the elements yet profoundly enduring. Step into the confines of ancient Egypt's first intermediate period, a time more shadowed than illuminated, yet holding the haunting whispers of the Ipuwer scroll deep within the Leiden Papyrus, 344. This lament is a chilling dirge, echoed through time, driving us to imagine a world where societal collapse leaves nobility in starvation's grip and the desperate few indulging in the unspeakable, feeding on human flesh. Scholars pore over its verses, peeling back layers of raw emotion, striving to understand the chaos that once spread across the Nile's banks. The authenticity of the Ipuwer scroll has been the subject of much debate, battered by the waves of time, yet preserved, with corrections aligning it loosely with the 12th dynasty. Its verses, however, hark back to an era of even earlier turmoil, a period where the norms that anchored society melted away, replaced by shadows and whispers of dark deeds once deemed unimaginable. The scribe's lament acts both as a historical account and a warning shrouded in allegory, urging readers to comprehend the lengths to which desperation can stretch human actions. Cannibalism within the Ipuwer scroll certainly shocks, standing as an emblem of cultural collapse, a symbol more often rooted in fear and hyperbole than in widespread practice. Medieval minds, when pressed against the wall of survival, might have conjured such imagery, not only as an expression of ultimate taboo, but as a metaphor for societal degradation. Here lies the task of discerning between ancient exaggerations and potential truths, wondering at the true survival strategies called into existence when the earth failed to yield its bounty. Archaeological evidence and historical texts together weave a tapestry of cautious possibility. While some seeds of doubt insist these accounts are mere sensationalism, similar tales across other times and lands of strife lend a curious credence. These findings force us to revisit the past with an anthropological lens, unveiling how famine might indeed sever the fetters of once sacred taboos, pushing individuals to operatically grim decisions out of sheer necessity. Yet the Ipuwer scroll is more than grim episodes. It is a literary revelation, an ancient treasure steeped in both narrative brilliance and historical resonance. Its lines brim with chaos and inversion, where hierarchies dissolve and the divided dance of the common and noble blend into indistinction. Through vivid imagery, the scroll presents a world in upheaval, exceptional for its rich literary craft, and as a trove for scholars eager to piece together a portrait of turmoil and transformation. Collaboration across disciplines is key to unlocking the scroll's full potential, integrating insights from history, linguistics, and archaeology. The document rises as an essential beacon in the study of Egypt's cyclic stories of rise and fall, echoing hard-learned lessons about human resilience and morality under duress. Words interred within this ancient riddle sketch not just a tale of Egypt, but a timeless narrative of human endurance against nature's fickle whims. In its verses, one discerns the signs of a civilization unravelling. Streets once orderly now lie lost in chaos, a mirror to humanity's looming existential fear and the grim, transactional nature of survival. The picture painted is stark. Societies shed their sanity, revealing raw instincts when unchecked by law or custom. Class disparities dissolve as nobles and commoners alike tread paths they'd never imagined. The breakdown hits all societal strata differently. Those once privileged find themselves humiliated. At the same time, the disenfranchised seize acts of rebellion, an inversion of order, an egalitarian disarray born from desperation. This is a testament to the unrelenting dynamics of social structures and chaos, revealing more about human nature under crisis than any orderly governance could. Famine runs as a recurring theme, woven into the very fabric of the scroll. it borrows from an era besieged by severe drought and political disarray, a fertile backdrop for exploring scarcity's extremities. The scroll teaches that famine belongs to a continuum of human experience, a cycle rather than a standalone catastrophe, a constant challenge to survival instincts and long-standing traditions. Peeling back the linguistic layers of the scroll reveals deeper truths. Scholars have analysed its syntax and semantics, revealing alterations like red ink corrections, hinting at evolving historical interpretations. The language paints a portrait not just of chaos, but of how the ancients understood and chronicled their turbulent surroundings. Within these lines of chaos, the scribe's emotional undertones are made manifest, aided by superstitions guiding community responses to calamity. These beliefs, far from mere folly, serve as cultural lifelines tethering society's spirit amidst seemingly insurmountable adversity, a mechanism crafting coherence where chaos threatened to reign supreme. Beneath its grave currents, a thread of irony and dark humour runs through the scroll, an essential buffer against the omnipresent abyss. Through sarcasm and satire, the scribe critiques social hierarchies, hinting that even the ruthless tide of chaos can mock humanity, a reminder of laughter's unyielding role in crises. As echoes of the Ipuwer scroll fade, they leave behind not just lessons of history, of resilience and moral struggle against the whims of a capricious nature, but a timely reminder of shared humanity across epochs. These ancient stories push us to reckon with both our past and present vulnerabilities, encouraging humility before the great forces of nature that bind us and drive home our endurance, adaptation, and capacity for shared stories that transcend time itself. In the barren fields of Gabeline, ancient skeletons whisper of Egypt's past calamities. These bones, though silent, hold stories that echo the struggles of a civilization in decline. Unearthed from dusty burial grounds, the skeletons reveal Harris lines etched in the bones, silent reminders of a time when starvation halted growth. In this narrative, these lines and cut marks are not mere curiosities, but enduring testaments to the suffering endured by those who walked these lands during Egypt's tumultuous first intermediate period. The Nile, once a giver of life, became fickle, leaving fields empty and hunger rampant, pushing people toward measures that tested the boundaries of desperation and social norms. Examining these bones, we find blade-shaped cut marks on ribs, suggesting acts that defy modern sensibilities. Scholars debate whether these marks are evidence of ritualistic practices or, more chillingly, acts of cannibalism, a grim response to famine's relentless grip. Each skeleton is like a page from a dusty tome, each cut a sentence detailing tales of survival against all odds. The enamel hypoplasia on teeth and the stunted growth evidenced by Harris lines speak of repeated cycles of deprivation, where the young suffered most. This paleopathological mapping provides stark evidence of how starvation not only claimed lives, but etched enduring reminders on those who survived. Further probing reveals a shift away from traditional diets toward consumption of C4 desert grasses, plants of the arid, less fertile regions. This switch points to a survival strategy spurred by necessity, highlighting a worrying adaptation where nutritional value was abandoned for mere sustenance. The shift mirrors the larger environmental crisis gripping the Nile Valley, forcing its people to rely on what the desert grudgingly offered. These isotopic markers tell a tale of adaptation born of desperation, where survival triumphed over taste and tradition. Historical records paired with forensic findings from Gabeline beckon us to confront unsettling questions about cannibalism. We must distinguish between cultural rituals and acts born of dire necessity. Such actions blur lines between cultural practices and survival imperatives. The collapse of societal structures during that period forced individuals to re-evaluate deep-seated taboos. Were these acts widespread or isolated? The evidence leaves room for debate as historians and anthropologists explore the dual motivations, desperation, and the integration of death into a communal existence against a bleak background. Famine was a cruel equaliser, and starvation's reach knew no class boundaries. Signs of malnutrition in noble remains suggest that even the privileged were not immune, yet the more violent marks were found notably on commoners' bones. This rare levelling of society underscores famine's exhaustive impact, even as the enduring inequities in access to resources continue to reflect societal divides. While the elite might have managed with less hardship, common people were forced to confront choices that tested their humanity. This duality, ingrained in bone, tells of how society struggled and sometimes even bonded under the weight of widespread scarcity. Despite these hardships, the burial practices at Gibelline are a testament to the resilience of cultural beliefs. Each skeleton, regardless of its state, was interred with traditional rites, hinting at a society that clung to spiritual identities in chaos. The act of burial, though strained, underscores a commitment to maintaining cultural identity, a ritualistic defiance against despair. Even as starvation ravaged the living, the respect shown to the dead suggested a tether to a cultural past that spoke of endurance and faith, a small beacon of normalcy amid rampant destruction. Yet interpreting these findings is no simple feat. Archaeologists must carefully separate traces of violence from ritualistic or survival acts. This intricate task bridges history, osteology, and environmental insight to fully unravel the saga preserved in these bones. Scientists must balance their understanding with sensitivity, avoiding the pitfalls of imposing present-day contexts on past events. Indeed, the work is as much about speculation as it is about science, demanding a nuanced approach that respects the narratives these bones silently contain. Communicating these findings to a modern audience also raises ethical concerns. It is vital to navigate the tightrope between presenting stark truths and maintaining the dignity of those who once lived. The responsibility of researchers extends beyond discovery to educate with respect, ensuring the stories conveyed deepen our understanding while avoiding sensationalism. These bones offer lessons that extend beyond their time, cautionary insights into the fragility of societies reliant on environmental stability. Today, as we face similar challenges of food security and climate change, the stories buried at Gibelline emerge as timeless warnings. The adaptation strategies of the ancient Egyptians, however extreme, underscore the potential human costs of environmental neglect. Echoing across centuries, these bones call us to re-evaluate our stewardship of the environment, reminding us of the precarious balance upon which all civilizations rest. They form a bridge from the shadows of the past into the light of present-day concerns, urging caution, humility, and proactive change. As we reflect on these stark echoes of history, the resilience and trials of Gibelline's ancient inhabitants remind us of the enduring strength and fragility of human resolve. The Nile River was more than just a stretch of water. It was the lifeblood of ancient Egypt, dictating the rhythm of life with its dependable, nutrient-rich floods. Yet during the first intermediate period, This dependable tide faltered, and the Nile's generosity waned, sowing seeds of despair across the land. Rivers turned shallower than the memories of plentiful years gone by, and with them, fish populations that once teemed vanished into oblivion. It was a time when nets returned empty, leaving bellies to echo their hollow cries, revealing an ecological dance out of step with itself. As the waters withdrew, the intricate tapestry of life that thrived along the Nile unravelled. The fish, Nile perch and catfish, that once splashed joyously through the currents, became ghosts that haunted hungry dreams. This ecological imbalance echoed through the food chain, reverberating in the hallowed halls of Egyptian society. What the ancient chronicles spared in their tales, archaeology whispered in fragments of bone and earth. Layers beneath our feet recording where vibrant life once thrived, now replaced by tales of dust and barren lands. Revealed by receding tides, crocodiles, apex predators and spiritual symbols, roamed stories and nightmares alike. Revered and feared, they were divine emblems of power, exemplified by Sobek, the crocodile god. But as the Nile receded further, these beasts grew too close for comfort. Desiccated nests lay strewn above the shrinking waterline, a jarring testimony of a river laying bare its secrets. Driven from sanctuary to human habitation, these creatures painted new portraits of danger, a stark reminder of a society on the brink. Human imagination redefined Sobek, shifting from guardian to a harbinger of doom, a reflection of nature's ire and uncontrolled forces. Yet amid tales of terror, a deeper truth emerged. Here were stories not just of fear, but of a people trying to understand their place in a world ruled by forces both revered and feared, suggesting a delicate balance teetering towards collapse. In the sands of Aswan Cataract and other archaeological digs, the ebb and flow of civilization echo in layers. These layers tell of flora and fauna gone amiss, of a desert gnawing at the edges of what once was bountiful. Such finds sketch vivid pictures of ecological losses mirrored by societal decline. Through ancient bones and artifacts, archaeologists piece together how human communities wrestled with nature's fickle temper, an interplay of resilience and adaptation as profound as the river's own moods. Amid this environmental maelstrom, literature like The Eloquent Peasant emerges as a voice for the ages. Though cloaked in allegory, its lamentations cut through time as visceral reminders of nets torn and hopes dashed. The anguished prose offers a scaffold across which modern sensibilities can reach into the heart of ancient despair, grappling with a river-grown reticence. Fields once dense with golden grain now stood barren, as waterlines retreated and survival took on desperate notes. Improvisation became the most fertile art, with fields of dust birthing innovations out of need. Anthropological insights reveal a dietary metamorphosis as Egyptians sought nourishment wherever found. Wild roots, leaves, anything to fill the gaping void left by failed harvests. Beyond food, a deeper meditation emerged on Egyptian society. Class lines blurred as famine became a common enemy. Nobles and commoners alike shared the pangs of hunger, a cruel levelling mechanism that paradoxically birthed unity from adversity. Ration records spanning social strata tell of shared burdens and remind us of the bonds forged in shared struggle. Yet humanity's resilience, even amid scarcity, found its strongest ally in faith. Temples transformed into sanctuaries of hope, echoing with prayers for divine succour. Ceremonies drowned in incense smoke reached out to gods, beseeching them to breathe life into the river once more. Faith became woven into survival itself, rites masking despair beneath bands of cultural endurance, suggesting stories still forming on the river's ebbing tide. Art and iconography captured this crisis, registering the emotional undertow with subtle strokes. Stone reliefs depicted a resilient people, even as they mirrored a landscape altering under nature's unpredictable hand. The cultural narrative, stoic and symbolic, marched on, imbued with the spirit of adaptation, transforming calamity into memories of endurance, immortalised in temple stone. From these hardships, lessons emerged, woven tightly into the cultural fabric of the Middle Kingdom. Policies shifted and laws took shape, capturing wisdom born from adversity. As nature's vagaries spun tales anew, the Egyptians demonstrated a mastery of adaptation, a mindful coexistence where humanity learned that the river's embrace, both gentle and fierce, was an unrelenting modern guide. Even when skies threatened, brass and water receded to a whisper. The enduring spirit of a people mapped a course through time, reminding us today that resilience interwoven with an understanding of nature holds potential for dreams, unfurling beneath a canopy of stars reflected in a river's uncertain flow. In the first intermediate period of Egypt, nature unveiled its formidable side, casting the land into turmoil and despair. The once dependable climate turned against its inhabitants, the Sahara encroaching ever closer to the verdant banks of the Nile. This was the time of the 4.2 kiloyear arid event, an era when westerly winds carried not just sand, but worry and hardship. The ecological stability that had once allowed Egypt to thrive was now a vanishing memory. Dust storms rolled in, laden with quartz particles, doubling in intensity as paleoclimate cores from Lake Fayum show. These storms obscured the sky, becoming an unwelcome constant, a daily struggle for survival. The Egyptians of old perceived these winds as sentient foes, threatening to choke the life from their crops and communities. Temple hymns make desperate calls to Shu, the god of the air, seeking his favour for cool breath against this avaricious advance of sand. Here the very air once revered for sustaining life turned hostile, painting the sky with foreboding reds and ochres instead of tranquil blues. Texts from the era reflect upon these skies as omens, as if nature itself had become unhinged from the orderly balance that the pharaohs were sworn to maintain. To the farmer toiling away, these crimson horizons signalled not beauty, but exhaustion. Every sunset was a reminder of fields turning barren, crops refusing to take root. The Nile's flood, once as predictable as the sun's rise, seemed a distant promise. In this shifting reality, stories and accounts of epic struggles against the dust became almost as pervasive as the storms themselves. The skies demanding homage doubled as an eerie messenger of fate, where survival met with a mythos of celestial displeasure. Amidst this chaos, the Egyptians' breadbasket, the fertile plains, began to falter. The intrusive desert sands seeped into every corner, impairing the land's ability to yield lush harvests. Records from the time recount dwindling crop types and production. The granaries, once brimming with wheat and emmer, stood hollow and haunted by shortage. Yet from the depths of deprivation, innovation rose. Spiritual and practical responses walked hand in hand as rituals pleading for divine intervention became even more frequent, striving to coax serenity and abundance back to the valley. Within Egyptian society, the cultural narrative morphed in response to this all-consuming crisis. The dust was not simply seen as an environmental nuisance, but evolved into a symbol enmeshed with spiritual significance. priests and pharaohs navigated this bridge between the human and the divine. Their ritual pleas are testament to a collective quest for cosmic understanding. Tales of the time speak of old alliances revitalised by mutual adversities, and of economic shifts that prioritised bartering systems and community granaries. As the storms found their way into the hearths and homes, turning them into miniature battlegrounds against nature's intrusion, daily life did not halt. Every Egyptian household felt the crunch of dust underfoot. Communities learned to band together, finding humour in shared chores and solace in camaraderie, thrived alongside fear. With each layered dust grain settled in a family's abode, practical adaptations emerged, echoing resilience in the face of relentless storms. The priesthood rose to unprecedented heights during this atmospheric onslaught. The spiritual leaders, seen as divine intermediaries, leveraged their roles strategically. Their ceremonies to air deities like Shu transcended mere ritual practice. They became demonstrations of human-determined hope in the face of earthly wrath. This period not only cemented their societal influence, but also expanded their scope, intertwining religious predictions with state decisions to stabilise a wayward civilization. Pharaohs, too, found their leadership reshaped, bearing the heavy expectations of divine guardians. Inscribed reliefs show pharaohs in grand rituals, appealing to celestial forces with generosity and grandeur, brandishing authority as both protectors and spiritual guides. Through strife, their rule adapted from that of omnipotent rulers to leaders of hope and perseverance, embodying the creed that the Nile's order could be reclaimed through steadfast resolve. The historical accounts left by scribes of this era tell not just a story of survival, but of a society tenaciously grappling with nature's brutish hand. Chroniclers recorded the dust storms as epics of endurance, their papyri woven with the lessons faced by those who dared live through them. These narratives dance between fact and lore, recording myths that converge on truth, seeking to enlighten future generations about life's fragility and resilience. Rituals gradually integrated the dust phenomena, becoming an essential component of spiritual life. Ceremonies that once unflinchingly acknowledged nature's bounty now included the dust's omnipresence, ritualistically consuming the new reality within holy allegory. Communities celebrated these rituals as conduits of hope and connection, affirming their identity amidst cosmic cruelty. As the dust finally began to settle, Egypt strode forward into an era of rebirth, rejuvenated by new agricultural techniques and inspired by a strengthened spiritual identity. The Middle Kingdom emerged, blossoming from the lessons painfully learned in the sands of adversity. Reborn from turmoil, Egypt's legend of survival stands eternal, proof of a people whose will outshone nature's greatest tests. In the depths of Egypt's first intermediate period, a time marked by chaos and scarcity, food became an endeavour of survival rather than consumption. The famine that gripped this ancient land necessitated culinary ingenuity that preserved life and identity while amidst adversity. As grain stocks dwindled and traditional foods became rare luxuries, the Egyptians tirelessly reinvented their diets to stave off starvation. Left to the mercy of uncertain floods and dwindling stores of emmer and barley, the population devised substitutes to stretch what little they had. At the heart of this transformation was the humble loaf of bread. No longer made of pure grain, it now included ground acacia bark and other desperate additives. Though the idea of baking with bark may raise an eyebrow today, for those ancient bakers, it was the material of necessity. Grinding the acacia finely and blending it with scant flour allowed for shapes that felt familiar to the hands, even if the taste was coarse and bitter. Despite its austere composition, this bread stood as a tactile connection to the past and an anchor during the tempest of famine. Beer, once a staple imbibed daily, was not immune to these hardships. With traditional brewing grains in short supply, creative alternatives like wormwood and saltmarsh reeds began to fill the vats. The bitterness of wormwood masked the absence of fuller flavours, while adding an unforeseen complexity that echoed the bitterness of their reality. These alternative brews became not just necessary refreshments, but a poignant reflection of endurance. They sustained both body and morale, maintaining the ritual of sharing a drink amidst life's upheaval. In an era where every meal was a stretch of resources, familiar routines such as brewing turned into acts of resilience and community cohesion. The taste of the era was determined not by preference but by resourcefulness. As the herbs and plants that were initially deemed unpalatable found their way into the communal pot, a new palate emerged, one of stark and earthy undertones which seemed harsh yet sustainable. Where once robust flavours reigned, now bitterness and dryness came forward, creating a new culinary identity that defied the luxurious expectations of a well-fed past. Over time, despairing tongues grew accustomed, and these improvised dishes forged new tastes for a survival, marking every bite with memories of resilience. Imagine the aroma of baking, usually comforting, now tinged with the earthy scent of desperation. The act of kneading became a ritual of defiance. Heaters of clay turned traditional hearths into centres of hope, with meals binding communities in the warmth of shared struggle. In the face of scarcity, this collective persistence mirrored the Egyptian spirit, where even the daily act of making bread served as an intimate resistance to being undone by the times. Some might call these adaptations revolutionary, turning dire circumstances into a testament to human ingenuity. They say that necessity is the mother of invention, and here it proved true. With limited resources, the Egyptians explored the full breadth of their environment's offerings, finding nourishment and sustenance in the least likely of places. When they embraced changes in their diet, they did more than adapt. They reconstructed their identity through their meals. The foods of famine carried philosophical undertones, questioning complacency and inviting reflection on broader themes of survival and adaptability. Even as the land recovered and the traditional methods regained prominence, echoes of these famine foods lingered in the annals of history. The lasting culinary impressions went beyond sustenance to illustrate a period defined by endurance. Archaeologically speaking, remnants found in tombs and pots are more than just relics. They offer insight into a human condition that transcends time and place. Modern curiosity about these desperate recipes may inspire us to revisit the past, not just to replicate flavours, but to understand the resilience interwoven within them. In recreating these ancient recipes today, some might balk at the occasionally intolerable bitterness, yet they find themselves connected through an unbroken line of heritage, tasting history in each bite, appreciating the inventive spirit that fought against and transcended adversity. Egypt's famine recipes are more than historical footnotes. They are echoes of human tenacity, offering lessons that resonate through the corridors of time. In the shadowed landscape of ancient Egypt's first intermediate period, the banks of the Nile flickered with a different kind of fire. These were neither the welcoming hearth flames of communal gatherings, nor remnants of any traditional festivity. Instead, they illuminated a chilling narrative born from desperation, where survival drove human instinct to the brink of unimaginable acts. As villagers faced the unyielding grasp of famine, the flames became grim beacons, signalling a descent into the darkest depths of human necessity. Night by night, vigilant watchmen, once protectors of prosperity, etched their reluctant testimonies into stone and wood. Their duties expanded beyond mere guardianship of goods to becoming chroniclers of survival cannibalism. In the haunting quiet, the tally marks grew. They served both as pragmatic records and silent stories, documenting each torch-lit gathering where morality was consumed alongside sustenance. The graffiti left by these witnesses is imbued with dread, etched into walls and obelisks, as confessions of a society grappling with the unthinkable. Among the hurried inscriptions were phrases like "En almighty nenet desi f," the meat of his brother, an unsettling acknowledgement of the strategies people employed to endure. The symbolic tallies, though unsung, carried the weight of a community's sorrow. They recorded not the mundane trade of goods, but a stark inventory of dwindling humanity. These marks, layered with dust and time, provide a glimpse into a bleak reality where neighbours became strangers, and survival demanded forsaking the bonds of community. The air, thick with dust and despair, mirrored the frayed connections between villagers, as each new day brought a renegotiation of kinship under the relentless sun. As the days stretched into eerie nights, a darker mythology wove itself through Egyptian consciousness. Within coffin text spell 472, nightmares mingled with waking fears, crafting visions where meat that spoke filled dreams with horror. These narratives transcended mere tales. They were etched into the psyche, transforming dreams into battlegrounds where the despair of starvation collided with the desperate need for connection. Each haunted retelling served as a cautionary echo, a reminder of hunger capable of devouring both flesh and spirit. This period of turmoil brought to light a society constantly on edge, governed by the omnipresent fear of starvation. The primal instincts unleashed by this fear reshaped social norms, twisting familiar relationships into unrecognisable forms. Anxiety permeated daily life, turning minor disagreements into fierce confrontations, and whispering rumours grew into distrust-fueled feuds. Once intact communities fractured under the strain, casting familiar faces into the roles of strangers and foes, while remnants of past ties faded into ghostly echoes. In archaeological digs beneath the Hut-Sekemes pyramid village, evidence of this dark chapter surfaces. A burn layer, a stratigraphic anomaly, lies embedded in the earth, revealing a charred narrative of survival marked by calcined human remains. These layers, preserved as spectral signatures, provide a haunting testament to deliberate acts masked in secrecy. They tell of desperate rites conducted away from condemning light, whispering of a time when survival meant indulging in rituals, both clandestine and sacrilegious. As archaeologists uncover these layers, they not only piece together fragments of a tragic past, but confront the chilling ingenuity of ancient survival. Amidst this chaos, myth and belief twisted into new forms, with the figure of the cannibal king emerging as both a deity and a desperate construct of the imagination. Communities entreated forgotten gods, offering prayers muddled by hunger-driven visions. The lines between ritual and sacrilege blurred, as cannibalistic myths offered a strange solace, a way of making sense of a world in chaos. These tales, passed down through time, reveal a society grappling with forces beyond their command, seeking protection from the very fears they personified. The act of cannibalism transcended its gruesome reality, evolving into a spiritual transaction. In the desperate fireside rituals, consuming the meat of his brother became an offering to unseen forces, a plea for intervention when all earthly means failed. Flesh and spirit intertwined, creating a paradox where survival honoured necessity over morality. These acts, driven by starvation's urgency, left a lasting mark, a silent testimony to the gritty and profound resilience of the human spirit. The fires themselves become storytellers, transforming fuel into ash and preserving history in their flickering light. The embers of the East Bank chronicle a tale of survival through the language of combustion, recording not just physical consumption, but the complex dance of humanity's struggle against its own abyss. Flames, both friend and foe, scripted narratives where survival and symbolism fused into a single reality, a reality where necessity became a vehicle for cultural memory. In the remains left by these fires, Egyptians conjured culture from chaos. Necessity birthed rituals and rites, reshaping societal norms as new traditions emerged from the embers of famine. Allegories of resilience and collapse, the narratives call to us through time, embodying both the ancient past's haunting shadows and its enduring spirit. Through this, we're reminded of the indomitable essence of humanity, its ability to adapt to even the direst circumstances, a lesson etched irretrievably into the sands of time. As the shadows deepened over Egypt, Thebes, once a centre of cultural brilliance, found itself in turmoil. Famine gripped the land, and hunger haunted its people. The fertile fields lay barren, storerooms echoed with emptiness, and eyes were hollow with despair. The unrelenting drought turned life along the Nile into a relentless battle for survival, unravelling societal norms and driving people to extremes. The citizens of Thebes clung to hopes that seemed more symbolic than real, yearning for salvation in a time ruled by uncertainty and fear. In this crucible of crisis, something remarkable began to unfold. The need for survival transcended into a drive for rejuvenation, a push towards recapturing past prosperity. Thebes became a microcosm of a broader struggle, illuminating how hardship could forge paths previously unseen. From artisans to officials, farmers to nobility, everyone played a part in resurrecting the Nile's legendary splendour, transforming Thebes into the axis upon which Egypt's future balanced. Rising from this chaos was Mentuhotep II, not just as a ruler but as a beacon of unity. Emerging from the ashes of a fractured nation, his ascent marked the beginning of a movement towards rekindling Egypt's ancient glory. He became the very embodiment of hope for a populace languishing under the tyranny of starvation and civil discord. Engaging with local elders and issuing grand proclamations from his court, Mentuhotep stretched beyond mere restoration. He envisioned not just stability, but prosperity, vowing to reshape Egypt's fate with promises of abundance. Mentuhotep's unifying quest involved empowering regional governors and crafting strategic alliances, paving his path with a blend of charisma and political savvy. His vision extended past superficial gestures, aiming instead for a deep-rooted transformation, rallying Egyptians under a single banner against the backdrop of shared necessity and collective effort. Through his leadership, ancient rivalries dissipated into visions of a flourishing post-famine era, fostering a legacy rooted not in ideals of grandeur, but practical union. Underscoring his reign were the barley barge rituals, vivid spectacles that fortified both hope and divine connection. As dusk fell over the Nile, barges adorned in divine likenesses traversed the river, offering symbols of bounty and a new dawn. Villagers gathered by the riverbanks and their spirits stirred by the grain-laden vessels, representing both sustenance and renewed faith. These processions were far more than mere display. They radiated divine benevolence, reaffirming Mentuhotep's providence and mending communal trust. Through incense-scented air and collective chants, these rituals wove a sensory tapestry, merging celebration with spirituality, symbolising humanity's deep-seated bond with the divine. Yet in the shadows of promised abundance lurked the threats of greed and disorder. Mentuhotep foresaw these dangers and deployed not just grain but guardians to protect it. Soldiers accompanied the granaries, wielding authority and cohesion, safeguarding livelihoods amidst a world unmoored. Their role extended beyond mere defence. They carried the promise that sustenance would reach those in need, becoming Mentuhotep's threads knitting the fractured tapestry of society anew. The Stela of Jetji stands as testament to Mentuhotep's powerful governance. This stone artifact captured his reign through praises of nurture and abundance, rather than conquest. It spoke of a king who filled bellies and swelled the river, turning governance into a lifeline during times of arcane rituals. Beyond mere homage, the engravings were a dialogue between divine aspiration and human endeavour, framing Egyptian prosperity as a fusion of myth and reality. The stela immortalised a paradox, that absolute power and acclaim might coexist, particularly when rooted in nourishment, crafting mythology into meaningful lessons of statecraft. Silent granary ceilings bore witness to Mentuhotep's foresight, etched with symbols of doubled capacity. They represented more than logistics. They were emblems of accountability and stability, transcending ephemeral relief towards sustainable continuity. These prosaic artifacts engaged with an ethos that prioritised the kingdom's thrive over mere survival, engraving hope into the fabric of daily life. Under Mentuhotep II's aegis, rituals for the river became elaborate negotiations for rejuvenation, intertwining celestial and earthly orders. Sacred performances echoed through temple halls, reaching beyond plea to awaken the Nile and re-establish divine favour. Accompanied by rhythmic chants and offerings, these rites invoked nature's revival, connecting the faithful to both spirit and soil in a cosmic dance of prosperity. As desperation turned to deification, Mentuhotep's reign embodied the divine kingship's power to foster hope. He transformed from mortal ruler to god-king, reshaping the emotive landscape of Egypt by harmonising governance with spiritual intimacy. This divine ascent was a nuanced blend of authority and veneration, asserting a kingdom's reliance on spiritual sway as much as material provision. Mentuhotep became a symbol of unity, etching his legacy into Egypt's story as one of resplendence and survival, a journey from famine to flourishing continuity. The reliefs of Deir el-Bahri captured the artistic and sovereign virtues of his reign, illustrating a nation flowing between prosperity and divinity. Beyond mere depiction, these panels echoed the harmony between cultural resurgence and political savvy, crafting a narrative tableau that immortalised Mentuhotep's efforts into a timeless emblem of resilience and renewal. In uniting Egypt, Mentuhotep II set forth a tide that resonated through ages, marking a cultural renaissance that fortified Egypt's enduring march toward magnificence. His story remains a beacon of governance, resilience, and cultural infusion, an eternal testament to the power of collective revival from the shadows of desolation. In the grip of a sun that refused to yield, Egypt found itself staring into the abyss of relentless drought. The land, once vibrant, now parched and weary, bore the marks of a civilization struggling to reconcile its faith in the life-giving Nile with the harsh reality of barren fields. The memories of these trying times carved deep grooves into the Egyptian psyche, much like the timeless hieroglyphs etched in stone, a reminder that even the divine can turn a blind eye. The toll of these events was not just physical, it weighed heavily on hearts and minds steeped in the reverence of the Nile's waters, challenging beliefs cemented by generations. During the Middle Kingdom, as Egypt emerged from the shadows of this parched era, the scars of previous suffering prompted a seismic shift in governance and the distribution of resources. What began as a natural catastrophe catalysed a re-evaluation of societal norms, birthing laws intended to stave off similar tragedies. Thus, Egypt embarked on a journey of adaptation, weaving drought chapters into the tapestry of its legislation like foreboding whispers of lessons learned, all to avoid the mistakes of the past. Amidst this landscape of change, the Nilometer took on a role of immense significance. Serving as both a practical tool and a symbol, it became a guardian of Egypt's fortunes. With every rise and fall of the Nile, the marks etched into its stone guides foretold the year's harvest, dictated tax policies, and lent stability to a civilization built on a river's mercy. When the drought distorted these cycles, the Egyptians recalibrated both the Nilometer and their approach to prosperity and famine, blending innovation with age-old prayers to maintain equilibrium with an often cruel environment. Out of necessity, Egypt gave birth to laws addressing grain allocation, water usage, and fiscal measures for lean times. These laws, born from hardship, echoed the rituals and rhythms of a people desperate to glean sense from chaos. Their purpose was clear: to mitigate tragedy by sculpting governance around the gnawing needs of survival. The legislation bore traces of ritual practice and pragmatic invention, a duality reflecting lessons etched by time's unyielding hand. These laws' impact stretched beyond parchment limitations, touching every stratum of Egyptian society. Nobles and peasants, often worlds apart, felt their constraints and mercies in divergent ways. Unlike their lofty counterparts, peasants grappled with an unfathomable dance between survival and ethics. Stories from ancient debris and archival echoes reveal real-world entanglements of these laws, charting paths through a landscape fraught with moral ambiguity. Yet amid this bleakness, there arose rituals and ceremonies born of scarcity, aiming to placate the gods that held their fate. Painted with vigour, these scenes featured communities bearing offerings, their hopes resting in divine intervention. Between ritual incense and pleading, fear and faith collided, expressing a human desperation that transcends epochs. Such customs, often interwoven into daily life, crafted a unique cultural fabric that sought solace amid chaos, providing psychological sanctuary and a fleeting semblance of control. Overlaying these experiences were the instructions of Amenemhat I, a literary relic washing wisdom into the sands of time. These cautionary teachings, drawn from the raw truths of earlier failings, held themes of vigilance, preparation, and restraint. Amenemhat's words wove a narrative of leadership harmonised with nature, underscoring wisdom as Egypt's longest-lasting beacon. The scribes, those custodians of Egypt's legacy, bore witness in ink to the laws, rituals, and admonitions of their time. Their work documented history and crafted a mythology that informed and protected future generations. The scribe's pen, a bridge from past to present, maintained continuity and resilience amidst existential tremors. In their pieces, fact and folklore wove a delicate yet robust fabric, resilient enough to weather nature's wrath. From these trials, Egyptians perfected water management techniques, the legacy of drought-spurred innovations. Their ingenuity and foresight extended tendrils through time, informing civilizations across the centuries. The insights cultivated during these tribulations transcended the boundaries of history, becoming beacons for modern sustainability and resilience approaches. Ironically, the advancements born of necessity were recorded with exquisite care in hieroglyphs, a medium often reserved for commemorating triumph. Yet, in this artistry lay undertones of Egypt's battle with nature, a grim narrative cocooned in beauty. These inscriptions held layers of dark irony, showcasing both Egypt's sublime resilience and the relentless pursuit of surviving adversity. As we contemplate these narratives, lessons emerge from memory's silted banks, finding resonance alongside today's ecological debates. The echoes of ancient struggles reverberate, providing a mirror held up to modern times where resources remain fragile. By looking to Egypt's distant, dusty chronicles, we glimpse wisdom required for today's cyclical climate challenges. Finally, the floodplain of memory tells us that such stories remain more than historical footnotes. They enrich our cultural landscapes much like the Nile's silt, linking us to human resilience amid nature's whims. Preserving these tales as living narratives ensures their role in informing and inspiring future custodians of Earth's fragile balance. In the flow between past and present, we invite viewers to reflect on their place in this unending saga. If these ancient lessons speak to you, like, share and subscribe to join us as custodians of history's captivating tales.